As I observe my country now, what delights me and inspires me most is our rich diversity. I love our vibrant multiculturalism, that we are one, but we are many. So, my friends, I am honoured to join you today at Canada's Global Centre for Pluralism. You are an international centre dedicated to the creation of successful societies, openness, tolerance, understanding towards the cultures, social structures, values and faiths of other peoples. They are essential to the survival of an interdependent world. These are the most worthy goals. This week, I have led a delegation of prominent Indigenous Australians to Canada for dialogues on the common opportunities and challenges faced by both nations' Aboriginal peoples. We have travelled to Vancouver, now in Ottawa, and tomorrow to Iqaluit. I get it wrong every time. I've been practising too. The Canadian people are making us most welcome, and I thank you. Australia and Canada have close and unique linkages. We share a common legal and parliamentary heritage. We are founding members of the Commonwealth. Our soldiers, sailors and airmen have served alongside each other for over a century, and I treasured the opportunity to meet with some Korean War veterans this morning at your very beautiful symbolic war memorial. Like modern Canada, modern Australia has been built on migration. Both our countries value societies that are just, inclusive and socially cohesive, and we are both proud of our Indigenous peoples with their unique heritage and cultures. Indigenous Australians have lived on our continent and on its islands for tens of thousands of years. Before the early British settlement of Australia, which began in 1788, there were at least 200 Indigenous language groups, indicating great diversity amongst our first Australians. Since 1788, Australia has experienced successive waves of migrants. They initially came from the United Kingdom and Ireland, but at the time that the Australian states were federated to become a nation in 1901, there were also significant numbers of German and Chinese descent. Indeed, then, as now, Australia had a high proportion of people born overseas. Almost 30% of the almost 4 million Australians in 1901 and around 27% of our current population of 22 million were born overseas. Some of us have been in our country for countless generations, since the Dreamtime. Others have now been in Australia for 2 or 6 or 8 generations. Others just arrived yesterday, and more will arrive today and tomorrow and in the weeks and years ahead. Our countries are defined by our histories, our cultures, our laws, our customs, our land and our seas. But in my view, it is our people that most define us. People are our past, our present, our future. We are shaped by where we live, our values and our heritage. We are shaped by our mothers and fathers and by their mothers and fathers. And our hopes for the future are centred on the sort of country that we want for our children and our grandchildren. Millions of people have come from other countries to Canada and to Australia, seeking new lives, new opportunities. Australia has welcomed more than 7 million migrants since the end of World War II. 750,000 of them refugees and displaced persons. The first stage of that high influx of people from 1945 to 1970 effectively Europeanised Australia. Our migrants came from the UK, from Italy, from Greece, from the Netherlands, from Poland, from Hungary, from elsewhere. However, since the progressive disbanding of the White Australia policy, a racially discriminatory migration selection policy in the late 1960s and the early 1970s, the centre of our immigration programs has gradually moved from Europe to Asia. Today, our main source countries for migrants are the United Kingdom, China, and India. In Australia, we now identify with around 300 ancestries and speak just as many languages, including Indigenous languages. So the picture I am painting is that in modern Australia, multiculturalism is not just an idea, not just a policy, but it is also a simple demographic fact. Our diversity greatly enriches us. Many people believe that our successful settlement of those 7 million migrants since 1945 is one of Australia's greatest successes. I have to say, it's one I feel enormously proud of as growing up from that time. A British migrant to Australia, Emeritus Professor Eric Richards of Flinders University in Adelaide, made this observation in his 2008 book, Destination Australia, Migration to Australia since 1901. He wrote, "Immigration has been the great conductor of change, tension and growth in this modern Australian experience. It has been critical to its political maturity, to its demography, its economic development, its social cohesion, and its relations with the rest of the world, and also to its very self-understanding on identity. Immigration has clearly generated no revolution, little internecine conflict, no riots in the streets of any significance, little communal turmoil, and no permanent ghettos. So how has this happened? Of course, it has a lot to do with the people themselves. People migrate to succeed, not to fail. Most make the momentous decision to leave the land of their birth to seek new opportunities. But some have no choice, being displaced by war or persecution. But all who come to join us are looking for better lives for themselves and for their children. And a lot has to do with enlightened and visionary public policy. In 1945, the Australian government created the Department of Immigration to assist in the selecting and settling migrants and refugees. Visionary programs put in place after 1945 have been administered by more than 30 immigration ministers. They have included English language tuition, housing and other settlement support. But in the eyes of many, the most significant of these public policies is the inclusive nature of Australian citizenship. From 1949, access to full Australian citizenship has been available to all permanent settlers after a residential qualifying period and other requirements like good character. This access to a common citizenship status, the same rights and responsibilities as people born in Australia or of Australian parents, is a key foundation of our modern multicultural society. We celebrate our diversity and our unity every day of the year, but we particularly celebrate our shared citizenship each year on Australia Day in January. We honour the extraordinary achievements of many citizens, those born in Australia and those born overseas. We welcome many thousands of new citizens in hundreds of citizenship ceremonies in our largest cities and in some of our smallest country towns. In a few simple phrases, new citizens take the final step in their migration journey by saying, and I have said these phrases so often on these special occasions, "From this time forward, I pledge my loyalty to Australia and its people, whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, and whose laws I will uphold and obey." Ladies and gentlemen, Australia's best-known traditional song is Waltzing Matilda, written by Banjo Paterson in 1895. It's a story of a swagman, a travelling worker who camps by a billabong, a waterhole. He makes a cup of tea and steals a sheep to eat. He entertains himself dancing with his bedroll, known as a Matilda, his swag. When the sheep's owner arrives with the police, the swagman declares, "You'll never catch me alive." He escapes arrest by drowning himself in the waterhole. Oh, the tragic stuff of traditional songs. My friends, the Lieutenant Governor of South Australia is Mr. Huy Van Ly. He was born in 1954 in Quang Tri, in what was then South Vietnam. He arrived in Darwin Harbour in Northern Australia as a refugee in 1977. He has gone on to forge a very successful career, contributing greatly to his state and to our nation. His is one of those countless stories of refugees and migrants coming to make a new life, helping us to create our contemporary society. I want to conclude my remarks this afternoon with those that he made at Old Parliament House, Canberra, in June last year. When we arrived in 1977, we thought we had come with nothing, that we had not much more than our tatty bedrolls. But Australia has taught me that we brought a great deal. For me, he said, the experience of the last 34 years have been that of sharing of cultures. It has been like sunlight through a rising morning mist in Darwin Harbour. We came with not much more than a bedroll, our Vietnamese Matildas, to this place where we could waltz them to the tune of a Vietnamese bamboo flute and the melody of a Celtic ballad. Remember, he urged, there is a spirit that resides here, which may be heard as we pass by life's spring, which sings, "You'll come a waltzing, Matilda, with me." My friends, I wish you well in the important work that we all share in promoting and celebrating multiculturalism. Thank you, my friends.
Excellency, thank you so much for coming to Canada, but especially for being with us this afternoon and for your remarks. I would also like to issue a special welcome to the delegation of Aboriginal people who are with you on this very special trip. Welcome to all of you. Et bienvenue à tous nos amis canadiens qui sont ici et à nos chefs de mission et d'autres délégations. Je pense que c'est toujours tellement bon de vous revoir dans cette enceinte et de venir célébrer ensemble le pluralisme chez nous et ailleurs. I was very interested in all your comments, but there's one in particular. When you were talking about the waves of immigrants, we've got exactly the same situation in Canada. We moved from Northern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, then Asia, and as you were in Vancouver yesterday, if you probably, if you had walked some of the parts of that city, you would have thought you were in China, potentially in Japan, or in India, in Pakistan. I think that if I'm still right, and I'm sure that there are people who are experts on population here, but I understand that in Vancouver, more than 50% of the population now is non-Caucasian. So, you know, that these waves of different areas of the world coming to our shores, I think is something that we share very much as I was listening to you. And you probably had similar situations to us, that people came for different reasons. They came because they wanted to get away from conflict, from wars, but they all came for economic opportunity. And I would like to believe that some of our ancestors also came for the adventure of being able to be on other shores. And there's many, many more reasons. But in hearing you this afternoon, I'm reminded once more that our countries share so many features. And I was telling you earlier that we also find ourselves most of the time, if not all the time, on the same side of the table multilaterally. We share the same views, and I think we have some of the same values that we want to promote. And of course, we both have multicultural population, and again, if that has not changed in the last 2 years or so, Australia and Canada are part of the 4 countries who receive about approximately 50% of the world immigration. So that is, quite something to keep in mind. And of course, many of us are born here, but many are not. And we also have diverse Indigenous First Nations in both of our countries. And equally, we both have chosen to value diversity, to make the public investment in and the policy commitment that goes along with that. And of course, we have learned that pluralism is an ongoing process, in a sense, renegotiated on a day-to-day basis, because the needs, the aspirations, the priorities of society do change, even for those that have been here for a long time, not only for those who are first or second generations. And the history of Canada clearly shows that pluralism is, in a sense, comparatively recent in the way that we talk about it today. We cannot speak about 2 or 3 centuries ago, but certainly I think that is something that we can agree on. And our political institutions, I think, have enabled the country's culture, a culture of compromise, a culture rooted, in our case, first in English and French dualism, of course, building on our First Nations work in our country. I think as well as effective governance, both Australia and Canada have strong, vibrant, and creative civil societies. And along with government policies and practices that support diversity, civil society institutions are also of vital importance to promote inclusive citizenship. And many of our civil society organizations have been very involved in the promotion of diversity in our countries. So the successes and ongoing challenges of Canada and Australia, I think, hold valuable lessons for diverse societies seeking to value rather than fear diversity. I think living together is one of the great challenges of the 21st century as people move back and forth so much more. And make no mistake, it is a challenge. Whether big or small, whether we talk of North or South, whether we talk of India or Iceland, Albania or Zambia, all countries in the modern world have their own diversity. And how that diversity is perceived, whether it is valued, whether it is embraced, or whether it is denigrated and attacked, will have a significant impact on the prospects of every society around the world. So it's therefore crucial to note that while we're here today, we may agree in this room on the importance of valuing diversity, but it's not necessarily a universal view. As we move around the world, we can see that. The value of diversity is sometimes being questioned, brought under pressure and scrutiny, and in some cases, reconsidered and repudiated. In many places, human differences stemming from ethnicity, religion, national origin, and/or gender are seen as threats to stability and peace, to tradition, to culture, to power, and to prosperity. For those reasons, I think now more than ever, an organization like the Global Center for Pluralism is important. I think pluralistic societies are not models of perfect harmony. Of course not. But as Canadians and Australians, we know very well that it can work and that it is a good formula for everyone. Pluralism does not seek to eliminate disagreement or harmonize differences. It seeks instead to foster new habits of mind rooted in inclusion and in fairness. And the goal is to respect through compromise and to create civic communities in which every person, regardless of ethno-cultural differences, can realize his or her full potential as a citizen. Canada is a bilingual, multinational, multicultural society with an inclusive definition of citizenship. And in listening to you this afternoon and the many times that I've been in your country, I know that these are the values that are prevalent in your country as well. And the hard-won lessons and experiences, I think, of both countries are of great value to the rest of the world. And I'm struck by the potential for partnership between Canada and Australia in this area. While it's for each society to chart their course when navigating diversity, countries like Canada and Australia and organizations like the Global Center for Pluralism can provide invaluable perspectives, share important lessons, offer much-needed leadership, and at the same time continue to learn from others, because we do every day. Many years ago, too long ago, I was Deputy Minister in the Department of Secretary of State. Morris, you weren't born at that time. And this department at that time had both citizenship and the multiculturalism program. And it was, the multiculturalism policy was relatively new. So we were inventing as we were going along. But what I found fascinating was working with a very broad group of people from different cultures who had come together as an advisory committee to our program. And how they were telling me that, you know, not only are we different between cultures, but we're different within cultures, within families. Because those who arrive as a first generation have a particular set of objectives. And it's sometimes, depending on where you're from, it's survival. The second generation don't want to be like their parents. You know, they want to be like their friends. And what they were telling me was that in their case, many of them were third generation immigrants to Canada. And what they wanted was for their children to learn about their origin. And they wanted us to work with them in making that happen so that it was not lost and it did not devalue their Canadianness as new citizen, but they wanted their children to be able to have that and to share that with their friends. So, Excellency, thank you again for being with us. We're very honored that you've decided to come to this country and to this center. And I hope you will have a great trip up north, where you will go tomorrow, I understand, with your delegation. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Huguette. And this marks the conclusion of the formal part of our program. I would just like to echo what Huguette Labelle just said, to say, Your Excellency, thank you very much again for coming. We learned a great deal from your speech this afternoon, and we're just thrilled to have you and your delegation with us. And I say to everyone, we hope you can stay on and have something to drink with us before the weekend sets in. So thank you again for being with us this afternoon.